The world is louder than it's ever been. We are taught that to be seen, we must shout. To be heard, we must speak. But true power doesn't fight for attention. It commands it. The most influential people in history, the master negotiators, the visionary leaders, the silent architects of change, all share one secret. They know that words are a limited currency. When you speak too much, your value drops. When you speak with precision, your influence soars. This is not a book about being quiet. It is a book about being lethal with your language. It is about the psychology of the pause, the authority of a brief, and the art of making every single word count. Stop talking. Start influencing. This is How to Speak Less and Influence More. Production note: the power pause. After the line, when you speak with precision, your influence soars. Count to 3 in your head before moving to the next sentence. This demonstrates the book's core message immediately. Chapter 1. The Psychology of Silence. Imagine a room. It's filled with people all talking at once. They are pitching ideas, defending their positions, and filling every gap in the conversation with ums, ahs, and unnecessary justifications. Then one person speaks. They don't raise their voice. They don't use 10 words when 3 will do. And when they finish, they stop. They don't fidget. They don't look away. They just wait. In that moment, the entire energy of the room shifts. Why? Because silence is the ultimate power move. In this first chapter, we are going to deconstruct the psychology of silence. We're going to look at why we are terrified of it, how it creates a vacuum of power, and how you can use it to become the most influential person in any interaction. The primal fear of the gap. To understand why speaking less is so powerful, we first have to understand why we speak too much. For most of us, silence feels like a failure. In social psychology, this is often linked to our primal need for belonging. To our ancestors, a silent tribe member was an outcast or a threat. We are hardwired to believe that noise equals connection. When a conversation hits a lull, your brain sends a panic signal. You feel an itch to scratch. You tell a joke that isn't funny. You reveal a secret you should have kept. You lower your price in a negotiation before the other person has even said no. This is called the explainer's trap. The explainer's trap is the submissive urge to justify your existence through words. But here is the psychological truth. The more you explain yourself, the less confident you appear. High-status individuals do not over-explain. They state their position and allow the weight of that position to sit in the air. If you want to influence others, you must first conquer the fear of the gap. You must become comfortable in the vacuum. The vacuum theory of influence. Nature abhors a vacuum. Human psychology is no different. When you withhold speech, you create a psychological void. Humans are biologically driven to fill voids. If you are the one creating the silence, the other person will almost always be the one to break it. Think about a negotiation. You state your price, $10,000. And then you stop. Most people uncomfortable with the tension will immediately follow up with, but we could look at a payment plan, or, of course, that includes the extra features. By adding those extra words, you have just negotiated against yourself. You've signaled that your original price was a suggestion, not a fact. However, if you state the price and hold the silence, the vacuum puts the pressure on the other party. To relieve their own discomfort, they will often start talking. They might justify why the price is fair, or they might reveal their budget constraints. By speaking less, you have gained information while giving none away. You have maintained your currency. You have allowed the vacuum to do the work for you. The status signal, high power versus low power speech. There is a direct correlation between your word count and your perceived status. In behavioral studies, lower status individuals tend to speak more quickly and use more hedging language. Phrases like, I just thought, if that's okay, or I'm not sure, but... These are verbal apologies. They are the sounds of someone asking for permission to be heard. High-power speech is characterized by economy. When you use fewer words, each word carries more gravity. Think of a king's decree versus a servant's explanation. The decree is short. It is a period, not a question mark. To speak with influence, you must audit your verbal clutter. Remove the fillers, like, and actually. Remove the justifiers. Stop explaining why you have an opinion. State the opinion. Master the period. Most people speak in run-on sentences. They finish one thought and immediately jump to the next because they are afraid of losing the floor. Try this. Speak your sentence. Then imagine a physical period at the end of it. Close your mouth. Breath through your nose. Look the other person in the eye. This sends a subconscious signal to the other person's brain that says, I am comfortable with my thoughts. I do not need your immediate validation. That is the essence of authority. The listener's edge. Knowledge is power. We often think of influence as a pushing our ideas onto others. But the most effective influence is a pull. When you speak less, you listen more. This isn't just a polite social habit. It is a strategic gathering of intelligence. Most people are so busy preparing what they are going to say next that they miss 80% of what is actually happening in a conversation. They miss the tone of voice, the hesitation in a yes, the micro-expression of disagreement. When you become the quiet observer, you start to see the hidden levers of influence. You learn what the other person truly values, what they fear, and what they are looking for. Influence is about meeting a need. If you don't listen, you don't know the need. And if you don't know the need, you are just shouting into the wind. By speaking 30% of the time and listening 70% of the time, you gain the upper hand of information. You can then use your 30% to say the one thing that actually matters. You become the person who hits the nail on the head every single time. Chapter 1 Summary and Exercise. As we close this chapter, remember this. Your words are your wealth. Don't spend them all in one place. Influence isn't about being the loudest voice. It's about being the most impactful one. Silence isn't empty. It's heavy with possibility. Your exercise for today. In your next 3 conversations, whether it's with a colleague, a partner, or a stranger, I want you to intentionally leave a 3-second gap after they finish speaking before you reply. Don't nod. Don't say just wait. Observe the urge to speak. Feel the tension. And then notice how much more clearly you can see the other person when you aren't focused on your own voice. In Chapter 2, we will go deeper into the body language of silence, learning how to make your physical presence speak so loudly that your words become almost secondary. Chapter 2, the silent language of authority. In Chapter 1, we mastered the mental shift, the realization that silence is not a void, but a vacuum of power. But influence is not just heard, it is seen. Long before you open your mouth to speak, the people in the room have already decided who you are. They have calculated your confidence, your status, and your level of threat. They have done this using a primitive, lightning-fast assessment of your physical presence. This is the silent language of authority. If your words say, I am a leader, but your body says, I am seeking your approval, the world will believe your body every single time. In this chapter, we are going to align the two. You will learn how to make your presence speak so loudly that when you finally do choose to use words, they land with the force of an earthquake. The anatomy of high-status stillness. There is a fundamental biological truth in the animal kingdom. The predator is still. The prey is twitchy. Think about a deer in a forest. It is constantly moving, ears twitching, head darting, tail flicking. It is scanning for danger because it is the danger's target. Now, think about a lion. A lion can sit for hours, perfectly motionless, watching. It doesn't need to fidget because it is the apex. Humans have retained this prehistoric coding. When you fidget, when you adjust your tie, tap your pen, shift your weight from foot to foot, or touch your face, you are signaling prey energy. You are telling the room that you are anxious, uncomfortable, or seeking a way to escape the tension. High-status stillness is the ability to remain calm in the center of the storm. When you are in a high-stakes meeting or a difficult conversation, consciously minimize your micro-movements. Keep your hands visible but still. Keep your feet planted. When you move, move with deliberation. Stillness is the ultimate indicator of self-control. And if you can control yourself, the world assumes you can control the situation. The gaze of influence. We've all heard that eye contact is important, but most people get it wrong. They either stare too intensely, which feels aggressive, or they look away too quickly, which feels submissive. The silent language uses a technique called the power gaze. In a social setting, your eyes usually wander in a triangle between the other person's eyes and their mouth. This is friendly, approachable, and soft. But when it is time to influence, your gaze should shift. Imagine a third eye in the center of the other person's forehead. By focusing your attention on the triangle between their two eyes and that mid-forehead point, your expression naturally becomes more serious and authoritative. But here is the secret to the silent part of the gaze. Break eye contact slowly. When people are nervous, they flick their eyes away. They look down at their shoes or off to the side as if they've been caught doing something wrong. A person of influence breaks eye contact horizontally and slowly, as if they are finished looking, not as if they are afraid to keep looking. Combine this with the 3-second rule from Chapter 1. When someone finishes speaking, maintain that power gaze for 2 seconds before you reply. It signals that you are processing their words, not just waiting for your turn to talk. It makes them feel seen, but it also makes them feel judged in the most respectful way possible. The vertical of authority, posture, and space. Authority is literally measured in the space you occupy. In the corporate world, this is often called expanding your footprint. Low-status individuals try to make themselves small. They tuck their elbows in. They cross their legs tightly. They hunch their shoulders. Subconsciously, they are trying not to be a target. If you want to influence more while speaking less, you must claim your territory. The open frame. Never cross your arms when you are trying to persuade. It creates a physical barrier that suggests you are defensive. Instead, keep an open frame. Pull your shoulders back and down, away from your ears. This opens your chest and signals that you are unthreatened. The head tilt. Have you ever noticed that when people want to be liked, they tilt their head to the side? This is a submissive gesture. It exposes the carotid artery, the most vulnerable part of the neck. To project authority, keep your head level. A level head suggests a level mind. The slow turn. When someone calls your name or interrupts you, do not snap your head toward them. That is a startle response. Instead, turn your entire torso slowly toward the speaker. It suggests that you are moving on your own timeline, not theirs. The nod trap. This is perhaps the most common mistake made by people who talk too much, the excessive nod. We do it to show we are listening. We do it to be polite. But in the psychology of influence, a constant, rhythmic nod is a subservient signal. It looks like a bobblehead. It says, I agree with you, please keep liking me. If you want your words to have weight, stop nodding. Listen with a neutral, still face. When the other person says something truly profound or something you agree with, give one single, slow nod. Because you haven't been nodding the whole time, that one single nod becomes incredibly valuable. The other person will find themselves working harder to earn that second nod. You have turned your physical approval into a reward. That is the influence. The sound of certainty. Even when you do speak less, the way you say those few words matters. The biggest killer of influence is the uptalk, ending your sentences on a higher note, like you're asking a question, even when you're making a statement. It sounds like you are seeking validation. It sounds like you are asking the listener, is this okay? To speak with power, use the descending cadence. Finish your sentences on a lower note than you started. It turns your statements into facts. It anchors your words in the ground. Combine this with a lower volume. We often think that being loud is being powerful. But think about the whisper effect. When someone speaks softly and slowly, people have to lean in. They have to silence their own minds to hear yours. By lowering your volume and your pitch, you force the room to adjust to you. You aren't competing with the noise. You are the calm at the center of it. Chapter 2 Summary and Exercise. Your body is a broadcast tower. It is sending signals 24 hours a day. If those signals are noisy and twitchy, your influence will be static. But if your signals are still and deliberate, your influence will be a clear, undeniable frequency. Your exercise for today. Identify your fidget. Everyone has one. Maybe you play with your ring. Maybe you bounce your knee. Maybe you touch your neck when you're nervous. In your next meeting or conversation, your only goal is to eliminate that one movement. Sit in high-status stillness. Practice the one-nod rule. Observe how people react to your new, quiet gravity. You might find that by doing less, you achieve significantly more. Chapter 3. The Linguistic Scalpel. We have mastered the silence of the mind. We have mastered the stillness of the body. Now, we must master the weapon itself, your speech. Think of most conversations like a blunt instrument, a heavy, rusted hammer swinging wildly, hitting everything but the nail. People use filler words to stall for time. They use hedging language to protect their egos. They bury their best ideas under a mountain of verbal clutter. In this chapter, we're going to trade that hammer for a scalpel. The linguistic scalpel is the art of editing your thoughts in real time. It is the ability to strip away the fat of a sentence until only the muscle remains. When you speak with precision, you don't just communicate, you cut through the noise. You become the person who says in one sentence what others struggle to say in 10. And in a world of endless chatter, the person with the clearest message always wins. The death of the filler word. Why do we say like, or right? Psychologically, these are known as disfluencies. We use them because we are terrified of the gap we discussed in Chapter 1. We use them as a verbal signal to the listener that says, "Don't go away, I'm still thinking. I haven't finished my turn." But to a listener's subconscious, a filler word is a sign of cognitive overload. It suggests that you aren't in control of your message. It dilutes your authority. If you want to influence more, you must embrace the clean break. Instead of saying, I was thinking that maybe we should look at the budget again, you say, we need to review the budget. Notice the difference. The first version is a plea. The second version is a directive. To kill your filler words, you must learn to think in sentences, not in strings. Most people talk in one long, continuous string of consciousness. Instead, I want you to visualize your thought as a single, complete sentence. Say it, then stop. Let the period land. If you need a moment to think of the next sentence, take it in silence. A silent pause makes you look thoughtful. An makes you look unprepared. Excising the hedge. The most dangerous words in your vocabulary are the ones you use to play it safe. These are called hedges. I feel like, in my opinion, I just wanted to say. If that makes sense? When you use these phrases, you are subtly apologizing for having a thought. You are softening your stance so that if someone disagrees, you have an escape hatch. But influence requires certainty. If you say, I feel like this project might be over budget, you have invited an argument. You've made it about your feelings. If you say, this project is over budget, you have stated a fact. One of the most common status killers is the phrase, does that make sense? Think about that question. It implies one of two things. Either you are so disorganized that you aren't sure if you're coherent, or you think the listener isn't smart enough to follow you. Both are bad for influence. Replace does that make sense with a pause. If they don't understand, they will ask. If they do understand, your silence gives them space to agree. The law of economy, the 50% rule. In writing, there is a famous rule. Omit needless words. In the art of influence, we take this a step further with the 50% rule. Before you speak, especially in a high-stakes environment, ask yourself, can I say this in half the words? If you are explaining a proposal, don't walk the listener through every step of your journey. They don't care about the labor. They care about the result. Low-influence speakers explain the process. High-influence speakers explain the outcome. When you speak less, you force yourself to choose only the most potent words. You move from being a narrator of your own life to being a strategist of your message. Think of it like this. If every word you spoke cost you $100, would you still be talking? Probably not. You would be very, very careful about which words you spent. Start treating your speech with that level of financial discipline. The power of one. Human beings are remarkably bad at remembering multiple things at once. If you give someone 3 reasons to do something, they will likely forget 2 of them. Or worse, they will focus on the weakest reason and use it to pick apart your entire argument. This is the dilution effect. To influence more, use the power of one. One clear goal. One strong reason. One direct call to action. If you want a raise, don't list 10 things you've done this year. Pick the one biggest win, the one that brought the most value, and build your case around it. By focusing on one mountain of an idea rather than 10 hills, you make your position unassailable. Precision is not about being brief for the sake of brevity. It is about being brief for the sake of clarity. The ask and the exit. The final piece of the linguistic scalpel is the ask. How many times have you seen someone make a great point, only to ruin it by not knowing how to stop? They linger. They repeat themselves. They ask, "So yeah, what do you think?" If you want to influence, you must master the clean exit. State your point. Make your request. And then, this is the hardest part, stop talking. By ending a sentence on a firm downward note and then remaining silent, you hand the social burden to the other person. You have put the ball in their court. Most people will feel a frantic need to respond because you have ended with such clarity. This is where the speak less philosophy truly pays off. When you stop talking, the other person's brain goes into overdrive trying to process what you said. Your words are still echoing in their mind while they are trying to formulate a response. You have gained the psychological high ground. Chapter 3 Summary and Exercise. Your voice is a tool. Like any tool, it works best when it is sharp, clean, and used with purpose. The linguistic scalpel isn't about being cold or robotic. It's about respecting your listener's time and your own intelligence. It's about the confidence to know that your ideas don't need padding to be valuable. Your exercise for today. I want you to perform a verbal audit. Record yourself speaking for 2 minutes, perhaps explaining a project or telling a story. Listen back to it. Count the filler words. Identify the hedges. Then, record it again. But this time, use the 50% rule. Cut the length in half. Notice how much more expensive your words feel when there are fewer of them. In Chapter 4, we're going to look at the inverse of speaking, strategic listening. We will learn how to hear the unsaid and how to use the information you gather in the silence to guide others exactly where you want them to go. Chapter 4, Strategic Listening and the Art of the Pull. We have spent the first 3 chapters sharpening your silence, your body, and your words. But there is a final, critical piece to the puzzle of influence. It is the part most people ignore because it doesn't feel like power. That piece is strategic listening. In the world of high-stakes negotiation, there is a saying, the person talking is giving away information. The person listening is gaining it. Most people listen only to wait for their turn to speak. They are reloading their verbal weapons while the other person is still talking. But a true influencer listens for what is not being said. They listen for the pull. While pushing is about moving people with your arguments, pulling is about letting people move themselves toward your goals. When you master the art of the pull, you don't have to convince anyone of anything. You simply create the space for them to realize that your way is the only way forward. In this chapter, we are going to turn your ears into your most dangerous strategic advantage. The levels of listening. To speak less and influence more, you must move through the 3 levels of listening. Level 1 is internal listening. This is where most people live. You hear the other person's words, but you are filtering them through your own ego. You're thinking, how does this affect me? Or I have a better story than that. This level creates 0 influence. Level 2 is focused listening. You are locked into the other person. You see their expressions, you hear their tone, and you understand their literal meaning. This is where empathy begins. Level 3 is global listening. This is the influencer's domain. You aren't just listening to the words. You are listening to the energy of the conversation. You notice the topics they avoid. You hear the crack in their voice when they mention a specific deadline. You see the vacuum they are trying to fill. When you listen at level 3, you stop being a participant and start being a conductor. You aren't just hearing a story, you are reading a map. And that map tells you exactly where their pressure points are. The labeling technique. One of the most powerful ways to influence through listening is a technique used by top-tier hostage negotiators, labeling. When you speak less, your few words must be surgical. Instead of asking a barrage of questions, which can feel like an interrogation, you use labels to uncover the truth. A label starts with phrases like, "It seems like," "It sounds like," "It looks like." For example, if a client is hesitating on a deal, don't ask, "Why aren't you signing?" That puts them on the defensive. Instead, stay silent, observe their body language, and then say, "It seems like there's something about this agreement that doesn't feel right to you." Then stop. Because you used a label instead of a question, you aren't pushing them for an answer. You are pulling the truth out of them. Silence following a label is the most effective truth serum in existence. They will feel an overwhelming urge to explain why it doesn't feel right. They will give you the keys to the negotiation, all because you had the discipline to say less. Hearing the unsaid. Influence is found in the subtext. When someone says, "I'll try to get that to you by Friday," what are they actually saying? They are saying they don't have a plan. They are saying they are overwhelmed. If you respond with, "Okay, thanks," you have lost your chance to influence. If you listen strategically, you hear the try. You hear the uncertainty. By speaking less, you allow yourself the mental bandwidth to catch these low-frequency signals. You can then address the root cause of the problem before it even begins. Influence is the ability to solve a problem that the other person hasn't even admitted they have yet. When you do that, you aren't just a communicator. You are an essential asset. The mirroring effect. In the art of the pull, there is a simple linguistic trick that keeps the other person talking while you remain in control. It's called mirroring. Mirroring is the act of repeating the last 1 to 3 critical words of what the other person just said, as a question. Person A, "I'm just really stressed because the marketing team is completely behind schedule." You, "Behind schedule?" Person A, "Yeah, they've missed 3 deadlines this month, and it's affecting our launch." You, "Affecting the launch?" By only speaking 2 words, you have kept them talking. You are gathering a mountain of evidence and context, and the other person feels incredibly heard. More importantly, because you are mirroring their own language back to them, they begin to trust you subconsciously. We trust people who sound like us. By speaking less and mirroring more, you build an unbreakable bridge of rapport without ever having to share a personal detail or a conflicting opinion. The power of no. Most people think influence is about getting a yes. They are wrong. Yes is a trap. People say yes to get you to go away. They say yes to be polite while having no intention of following through. No, however, is a protection. When someone says no, they feel safe. They feel in control. Strategic listeners look for the no. Instead of asking, "Is this a good time to talk?" which invites a yes that might be a lie, ask, "Is now a bad time to talk?" If they say no, they have just given themselves permission to listen to you. They are now pulled into the conversation because they feel they are the ones who decided it should happen. When you stop chasing the yes and start inviting the no, you remove the pressure from the interaction. And when pressure is removed, influence rushes in to fill the space. Chapter 4 Summary and Exercise. Listening is not a passive act. It is a silent offensive. By speaking less, you allow the other person to lay out their entire hand of cards. You see their fears, their motivations, and their weaknesses. And because you are the one holding the silence, you are the one who decides when the game is over. Remember, you have 2 ears and 1 mouth. Use them in that exact proportion. Your exercise for today. In your very next conversation, your goal is to speak no more than 20% of the time. Use mirroring, repeating their last 3 words. Use labeling, "It seems like," and use the power of no. Would it be a bad idea to count how many times the other person says, "Wow, I really feel like you understand me"? They will say it, even if you've barely said a word. In our final chapter, Chapter 5, we are going to bring it all together. We will look at the Quiet Leader's Manifesto, how to maintain this influence over the long term, and how to handle the few moments when you must speak at length. The art of influence is almost complete. Chapter 5. The Quiet Leader's Manifesto. We have reached the final stage of our journey. You have learned to weaponize silence, to anchor your authority in stillness, to cut through noise with a linguistic scalpel, and to pull others toward you through strategic listening. But influence is not a one-time event. It is not a trick you perform in a single meeting. True influence is a reputation. It is the gravity you carry with you into every room for the rest of your life. In this final chapter, we define the Quiet Leader's Manifesto. We will explore how to maintain your power over the long term, how to handle the rare moments when you must speak at length, and how to transition from someone who is heard to someone who is followed. This is where the technique becomes your character. The law of scarcity, protecting your brand. In economics, value is determined by scarcity. If gold were as common as gravel, we would pave our driveways with it. The same is true for your presence. If you are always available, always talking, and always offering your opinion on every minor topic, you are gravel. You are common. Your influence is diluted by your own accessibility. A quiet leader understands the law of scarcity. This means you don't attend every meeting just to be there. You don't reply to every CC'd email within 5 minutes. You don't weigh in on office gossip or trivial debates. By withdrawing your presence from the noise, you make your arrival an event. When the person who rarely speaks finally clears their throat, the room doesn't just listen, they brace themselves. They know that whatever is about to come out is the result of deep observation and calculated thought. Ask yourself, are you spending your influence on pennies, or are you saving it for the big bets? Protect your brand. Be the gold, not the gravel. When you must speak, the anchor presentation. There will be times when silence is no longer an option. You may have to give a keynote, lead a board meeting, or deliver a difficult speech. How does a quiet leader handle the spotlight? You do it by using the anchor technique. Most speakers start with high energy, trying to win over the crowd with enthusiasm. This often comes across as needy or performative. A quiet leader starts with a heavy pause. Stand at the podium. Do not speak for 5 full seconds. Look at the audience, not as a judge, but as a silent observer. Let the room settle. Let the stragglers stop whispering. When you finally speak, do not start with "thank you for having me" or "I'm so excited to be here." Those are filler phrases. Start with a core truth. A single, powerful sentence that summarizes your entire message. Our current strategy is failing, and I know why. Today, we are changing the way we define success. By starting with a heavy anchor, you immediately ground the room in your authority. You aren't asking for their attention. You are providing the only thing worth paying attention to. The architecture of long-term respect. Influence is built on the foundation of trust and predictability. People follow leaders who are consistent. If you are quiet and powerful one day, but anxious and talkative the next, you create psychological friction. People won't know which version of you they are going to get, so they will remain guarded. To maintain your influence, you must master the low-reactive lifestyle. When a crisis hits, the first instinct of a talker is to react, to explain, to blame, or to panic out loud. The quiet leader does the opposite. They become the eye of the storm. They listen to the reports. They watch the chaos. They say nothing until they have a solution. This creates a reference point for everyone else. In times of trouble, people don't look to the person who is screaming orders. They look to the person who is the most composed. Your silence in a crisis is a beacon of safety. It tells your team, if they aren't panicking, I don't need to panic. This is the highest form of leadership. Influencing the emotional state of others through your own self-regulation. Handling the interrupter. In your journey to speak less, you will inevitably encounter the interrupter, the person who mistakes your silence for weakness and tries to talk over you. How does a person of influence handle an interruption without losing their cool? The silent correction. When someone interrupts you, do not fight for the floor. Do not raise your voice to finish your sentence. Simply stop. Immediately. Look at them with a neutral, calm expression. Wait for them to finish their interjection. once they stop, and they will stop sooner than you think because your silence will make them feel self-conscious. Wait an extra 2 seconds. Then say, "As I was saying," and continue exactly where you left off. You haven't argued. You haven't gotten angry. You have simply demonstrated that your message is a train that stays on its tracks, and their noise was merely a temporary distraction. You have reclaimed the status without saying a single aggressive word. The Manifesto Core Principles. As we conclude, let these 5 principles be your guide. Words are wealth. Spend them wisely, or not at all. Silence is space. Use it to let others reveal themselves and to let your ideas breathe. Stillness is strength. Your body should broadcast a signal of unshakable confidence. Precision is power. A single, sharp truth is better than 1,000 dull justifications. Presence is the goal. Make your absence felt and your arrival meaningful. The art of influence is not about changing who you are. It's about revealing who you are. It's about stripping away the habits of the prey and adopting the presence of the leader. You no longer need to fight for a seat at the table. When you speak less and influence more, the table will always find a seat for you. Chapter 6. The Architecture of the Killer Question. We have spent the first 5 chapters learning how to guard your words, still your body, and master the vacuum of silence. You have learned how to be a quiet leader. But leadership isn't just about holding your ground. It's about moving others. If influence is a game of chess, most people try to win by moving their own pieces as fast as possible. They explain, they persuade, they push. The master of influence does the opposite. They make you move your pieces exactly where they want them. And they do this using the most powerful weapon in the minimalist toolkit, the killer question. When you ask the right question, you do 2 things simultaneously. First, you speak less, letting the other person do the heavy lifting of the conversation. Second, you force the other person to adopt your frame of reference. In this chapter, we're going to stop telling and start steering. You will learn how to ask questions that don't just seek information, but create a psychological shift in the listener. This is the architecture of the killer question. The why versus the how, breaking the defense. Most people ask why questions. Why are we behind schedule? Why did you choose that vendor? Why is the budget so high? On the surface, these seem logical. But psychologically, why is an accusation? When you ask why, the other person's brain immediately shifts into defense mode. They stop thinking about the solution and start thinking about an excuse. They dig their heels in. They start talking. But they are talking to protect themselves, not to help you. The quiet leader replaces why with how and what. How and what are calibrated questions. They remove the accusation and replace it with a mission. Instead of why are we behind, ask what is the biggest obstacle stopping us from meeting the deadline. Instead of why is this so expensive, ask how does this price align with the value we discussed. When you ask a how or what question, you are speaking less and making the other person a partner in your problem solving. You aren't pushing them. You are inviting them to explain the world to you. And in that explanation, they will often talk themselves right into your point of view. The no-oriented question. As we touched on briefly in Chapter 4, the world is addicted to the word yes. But yes is a trap. It feels like a commitment, so people are wary of it. If you want to influence someone while saying almost nothing, stop asking for yes. Start asking for no. When someone says no, they feel safe. They feel in control. You can use this to get exactly what you want with zero social friction. Standard, high noise. Do you have 5 minutes to talk about the proposal? This is a yes trap. They might say yes, but they'll be resentful. Quiet leader, high influence. Is it a bad idea to spend 5 minutes on the proposal? If they say no, they have just given themselves permission to listen to you. Standard, are you okay with this price? Quiet leader, is this price totally out of the question? By framing your intent as a no-oriented question, you eliminate the need for a long, persuasive pitch. You ask the question, you go silent, and you let their desire for control do the work for you. The illusion of control. The secret of the killer question is that it gives the other person the illusion of control. When you tell someone what to do, they feel like a servant. When you ask them a calibrated question that leads them to the same conclusion, they feel like the architect. Imagine you are in a negotiation and the other side makes an impossible demand. A talker would explain why it's impossible. They would cite data, they would argue, they would create conflict. The quiet leader uses a mirror followed by a how question. We need this delivered by Tuesday or the deal is off. You, silence for 2 seconds, by Tuesday? Mirroring, them, yes, our launch is Wednesday. You, I understand the urgency. How am I supposed to do that without compromising the quality you've come to expect? How am I supposed to do that is the ultimate killer question. It is a gentle way of saying no while asking the other person to solve your problem. Because you are being quiet and respectful, they don't feel attacked. They stop being your adversary and start being your consultant. They will often come back with a compromise that they think was their idea. That is the pinnacle of influence. The architecture of what else? Most people stop at the first answer. The quiet leader knows that the first answer is usually a script. It's what the person thinks they should say. The real truth, the real motivation, and the real influence are found in the third or fourth answer. To speak less and get more, you must master the AWE question. AWE, and what else? When someone gives you an explanation, don't interrupt. Don't add your 2 cents. Simply nod, wait 3 seconds, and ask, and what else? Then, return to silence. The other person will dig deeper. They will reveal the hidden reason they are hesitant. They will reveal the true budget. By using those 3 words, and what else? You have gained 100% more information while giving away 0%. You are letting them empty their mind into yours. And once their mind is empty, you are the one who gets to fill it. The death of the suggestion. If you want to influence a team or a partner, stop making suggestions. Suggestions are targets for criticism. Instead, turn your suggestions into guided questions. Instead of, I think we should focus on social media marketing. Ask, what would happen to our reach if we pivoted our entire focus to social media? Instead of, you need to work on your tone with clients. Ask, what kind of impact do you think your current communication style is having on client retention? By asking the question, you are forcing the other person to visualize the outcome. They have to play the movie in their own head. If the movie ends in a way that aligns with your goal, they will adopt the idea as their own. You haven't told them anything. You have simply provided the map, and they have walked the path themselves. Chapter 6 Summary and Exercise. The person who asks the questions is the person who controls the frame. By speaking less and asking killer questions, you move from being a pusher to being a puller. You stop being the person who has to have all the answers and become the person who has the most profound questions. Your exercise for today. In every conversation today, I want you to ban the word why. Whenever you feel the urge to ask why, replace it with a how or what question. If someone gives you an answer, follow it up with, and what else? And then stay silent for 5 seconds. Observe how much more information you receive. Observe how much less energy you spend. And observe how, by saying almost nothing, you have become the most influential person in the room. Chapter 7. Strategic Vulnerability and the Trust Gap. Up until now, we have treated communication like a game of chess, a series of moves designed to maintain your status and protect your information. And while that is essential for authority, true influence requires something more. It requires trust. There is a psychological gap between being respected and being followed. Respect is often distant. Trust is close. You can respect someone from afar, but you only give your loyalty to someone you feel connected to. But here is the paradox. To build trust, you usually have to talk. You have to share. You have to reveal who you are. So, how does the quiet leader build deep, unshakable trust without falling into the trap of oversharing? The answer is strategic vulnerability. Strategic vulnerability is the art of choosing exactly one thing to reveal that humanizes you, while keeping the other 99% of your life behind the curtain of silence. It is about knowing that a drop of transparency is more powerful than an ocean of chatter. In this chapter, we explore how to bridge the trust gap by saying less, but meaning more. The unreachable problem. If you follow the speak less philosophy too rigidly, you run a specific risk. You can become a black box. If people know nothing about your motivations, your struggles, or your values, they will begin to project their own fears onto your silence. They might think you are cold, judgmental, or even calculating. When people feel they cannot read you, they stop trusting you. This is the unreachable problem. To solve it, you don't need to start a podcast about your life. You simply need to master the selective reveal. Think of your personal history as a vast library. Strategic vulnerability is not opening the doors to the public. It is taking one book off the shelf, showing the cover to the room, and then putting it back. By sharing a small, controlled piece of your humanity, you give people the hook they need to feel safe around you. When you are vulnerable on your own terms, you aren't losing power. You are demonstrating that you are so secure in your authority that you don't mind showing a crack in the armor. The fumble and the fix. One of the most effective ways to use strategic vulnerability is through the admission of a past mistake. Most people use their words to hide their failures. They spin, they deflect, and they justify. A quiet leader does the opposite. They wait for the right moment, and then they speak the truth about a fumble. Imagine you are leading a team that is terrified of failing. Instead of giving a long motivational speech, you say this: 5 years ago, I mismanaged a project exactly like this one. I ignored the warning signs, and we lost the account. It was the hardest lesson of my career. Here is what I learned. Then you go silent. In those few sentences, you have done more for your influence than 100 rara speeches ever could. You've signaled that you are human. You've signaled that you are a learner. Most importantly, you've signaled that you are honest. By being the first to mention a flaw, you remove the weapon from anyone else's hand. You have controlled the narrative of your own imperfection. Because you don't talk much, when you do admit a mistake, people listen with a level of intensity that creates an instant bond of trust. The architecture of the selective we. Influence is often won or lost in how we attribute success. A talker wants the credit. They use I and me. They want the world to know how much work they did. A quiet leader uses the selective we. When you speak less about your own contributions and more about the collective effort, you create a trust vacuum that others rush to fill with loyalty. When a project succeeds and someone praises you, don't give a long speech about your process. Use the minimalist pivot. The praise: you did an incredible job leading that presentation. The response: the team's data is what made it land. We put a lot of heart into this. By using we, you are being strategically vulnerable. You are admitting that you didn't do it alone. You are sharing the crown. Paradoxically, by giving the credit away, your status actually rises. People see you as a leader who is so confident in their own value that they don't need to hoard the spotlight. You become the person everyone wants to work for because they know that in your silence, their work will be seen. The I don't know power move. There are 3 words that the average person is terrified to say. I don't know. We think that saying I don't know makes us look weak or incompetent. So we ramble. We make things up. We fake it until we make it. But listeners can smell a lack of conviction from a mile away. Nothing kills trust faster than a talker who is clearly guessing. The quiet leader knows that I don't know, when followed by silence, is a power move. When a difficult question is asked and you don't have the answer, don't fill the air with I think maybe, or it could be. Look the person in the eye and say, I don't have that answer yet. I'll find out. Then stop. This is strategic vulnerability at its finest. You are admitting a limit to your knowledge. But because you say it with such clarity and lack of panic, it actually reinforces your authority. It tells the listener that when you do speak and say you know something, they can take it to the bank. Trust is built on the reliability of your word. If you only speak when you are certain, your certainty becomes your most valuable asset. Listening for the heartbeat. To bridge the trust gap, you must listen for what psychologists call the heartbeat of the other person. This isn't about the facts of what they are saying. It's about the emotion behind it. Everyone has a hidden need. Some people need to feel smart. Some need to feel safe. Some need to feel appreciated. By speaking less, you can hear the heartbeat. When a colleague is complaining about a workload, a talker would offer solutions or talk about their own workload. A quiet leader listens for the heartbeat and uses a vulnerable mirror. It sounds like you're feeling undervalued for the amount of time you're putting in. I've felt that way too. That's it. One observation. One small admission of shared feeling. You haven't solved their problem, but you have closed the trust gap. You have validated their humanity without giving away your professional authority. You have pulled them into a space of mutual respect. Chapter 7 Summary and Exercise. Influence is a bridge built of two materials, authority and empathy. Authority is the steel. Empathy is the mortar. Without the steel, the bridge has no strength. Without the mortar, the stones fall apart. By using strategic vulnerability, you provide the mortar. You show that behind the silence and the no-reaction poker face, there is a person who understands the human experience. Chapter 8. The Art of the Silent Negotiation. Most people believe that negotiation is a battle of arguments. They think the person with the most data, the loudest voice, or the most tireless persistence wins. They walk into the room with a briefcase full of whys and a mouth full of buts. They are wrong. Negotiation is not a debate. It is a clinical exercise in emotional regulation and strategic patience. The person who speaks the least in a negotiation is almost always the person who leaves with the best deal. Why? Because when you are silent, you are not just waiting. You are observing the other person's tells. You are letting their own anxiety do the work of lowering their price or increasing their offer. In Chapter 8, we move into the battleground. We explore how to win the silent negotiation from the boardroom to the car dealership by using the physical and psychological tools of the quiet leader. It's time to learn how to close the deal without ever raising your voice. The anchor and the void. Every negotiation begins with an anchor, the first number or condition placed on the table. Conventional wisdom says you should never go first. But the quiet leader knows that if you have the data, going first allows you to set the gravity of the room. You set the anchor, and then you create the void. Imagine you are negotiating a contract. You state your terms. The project fee is $50,000 with a 50% deposit up front. And then you stop. You don't say, because of the value we bring. You don't say, but we can talk about it. You simply state the anchor and look them in the eye. The void that follows is a psychological vacuum. The other person will feel an almost physical pressure to fill it. If they are uncomfortable, they will start talking. They might say, that's higher than we expected, or we'll need to check the budget. Whatever they say, do not respond immediately. Count to 5. By refusing to defend your anchor, you signal that the anchor is a fact, not a suggestion. You aren't haggling. You are stating the reality of the situation. The more words you use to justify a price, the more you suggest that the price is negotiable. The Ackerman silence. There is a famous negotiation system called the Ackerman model, often used in high-level business deals. It involves a series of decreasing offers. But the secret sauce of the Ackerman model isn't the numbers. It's the silence between the numbers. When you move from your first offer to your second, you shouldn't explain the math. You should deliver the new number and let it sit. If the other party pushes back, use a calibrated question from Chapter 6. How am I supposed to accept that? And then return to the silence. This forces the other party to negotiate against themselves. They will often start listing reasons why they can meet you halfway. They will reveal their walkaway point. By speaking less, you allow them to provide the roadmap to their own defeat. You are simply the passenger, watching them drive exactly where you want to go. The physicality of the close. Negotiation is a physical act. To influence the outcome, you must influence the space. In a negotiation, the person who leans back has the power. The person who leans forward is the supplicant, the person asking for something. If you want to project an image of total certainty during a deal, the steeple. Join your fingertips together in a steeple shape. It is a universal sign of confidence and intellectual dominance. The slow blink. When they make a counteroffer that you don't like, don't scowl. Don't shake your head. Simply look at them and perform one slow, deliberate blink. It signals that you've heard them, but you aren't impressed. The paper push. If a contract is on the table, don't fidget with it. Don't flip the pages nervously. Leave it untouched. When you are ready to move forward, slide it toward them with a single, smooth motion. These physical tells speak louder than 1,000-word pitch. They tell the other party that you are not desperate. And in a negotiation, the person who is the least desperate always has the most power. The last word trap. One of the most common mistakes in negotiation is the desire to have the last word. We feel that if we get the final sentence in, we have won the argument. But in the world of influence, the last word is often a loss. If you have reached an agreement, leave the room. Many deals have been ruined because the winner stayed too long and kept talking. They made a joke that offended the other party, or they mentioned a detail that reopened a closed door. Once the deal is done, give a firm handshake, a single nod, and an exit. I look forward to working with you. My team will send the paperwork. That's it. By exiting quickly and quietly, you lock the deal in. You don't give the other person's buyer's remorse a chance to breathe. You leave them with the image of a professional who is already focused on the next step. Your silence is the seal on the contract. The walk-away silence. The ultimate power in any negotiation is the ability to walk away. But you don't have to shout, "I'm leaving," to show this power. You use the walk-away silence. If a negotiation has hit a wall and the other party is being unreasonable, don't get angry. Don't plead. Simply gather your things slowly. Look at them and say, "It seems like we aren't in a place where this deal makes sense for either of us right now." Then stand up. If they want the deal, they will stop you before you reach the door. If they don't stop you, then the deal was never going to happen on your terms anyway. By using a quiet exit instead of a loud argument, you keep the door open for them to call you back tomorrow. You haven't burned the bridge. You've simply shown them that the bridge has a toll, and you aren't willing to lower it. Chapter 8 Summary and Exercise. Negotiation is the art of letting the other person have your way. By speaking less, you become a mirror. You reflect their own needs, their own pressures, and their own mistakes back at them. You don't win by being right. You win by being patient. Your exercise for today. The next time you are negotiating, even if it's just deciding where to go for dinner or asking for a small favor, state your preference in one short sentence. "I'd like to try the new Italian place." And then say nothing else. Don't explain why you're hungry for pasta. Don't mention the good reviews. Just let the Italian place sit in the air. Observe how the other person reacts to the void. Notice how often they simply agree because you haven't given them anything to argue against. In Chapter 9, we are going to look at the digital silence. We will learn how to speak less and influence more in the world of emails, texts, and social media, where a single K can be more powerful than a paragraph. Chapter 9. The Digital Silence. We live in an era of digital noise. We are tethered to devices that demand our attention every second of the day. Because communication is now instant, we have been conditioned to believe that it must also be constant. We overtext. We send follow-up emails before the first one has been read. We use emojis to soften our tone because we are terrified of being misunderstood. In doing so, we have become digitally cheap. We have flooded the market with our own availability, and our influence has paid the price. Chapter 9 is about the digital silence. It is about learning that in a world of instant replies, the person who takes their time is the person who holds the power. We are going to explore how to apply the Speak Less philosophy to your inbox, your Slack channels, and your social media. It's time to move from being a digital servant to a digital authority. The instant reply trap. When your phone pings with a work email at 8 p.m. and you reply within 3 minutes, what are you actually communicating? You think you are communicating efficiency and dedication. But to the subconscious of the receiver, you are communicating availability and anxiety. You are signaling that you have nothing more important to do than wait for their instructions. You have surrendered the frame of your own time. The quiet leader understands the power of the interval. By intentionally delaying your digital responses, you create a sense of selective focus. You signal that your time is valuable and that your attention is a limited resource. Try this. For non-urgent matters, wait at least 90 minutes before replying. For high-stakes negotiations over email, wait half a day. This delay creates a digital vacuum. While the other person is waiting for your reply, they are thinking about your position. They are wondering if they push too hard or if you are considering other options. Silence over a screen is just as heavy as silence in a room. Use it to let the other person negotiate against their own impatience. The minimalist email. Open your sent folder right now and look at your longest email. Count the I hope you're doing wells, the just checking ins, and the let me know what you thinks. This is verbal clutter. In the digital world, every extra sentence is a sign of insecurity. High-influence digital communication is surgical. When you write an email, apply the Linguistic Scalpel from Chapter 3. State the purpose, state the action, and sign off. Standard email. Hi Mark, I hope you had a great weekend. I was just wondering if you had a chance to look at that report I sent over on Friday. No rush at all. But we have that meeting tomorrow, and I'd love to get your thoughts so I can prep. Let me know. The quiet leader. Mark, have you reviewed the Friday report? We need a finalized version before tomorrow's 10 a.m. meeting. The second version is not rude. It is clear. It respects Mark's time by not making him read 3 sentences of fluff to get to the point. It positions you as a person of action, not a person of checking in. Remember, the person with the most power in a digital thread is usually the one with the shortest word count. The psychology of the K and the period. We have become so afraid of appearing cold that we have turned our professional chats into a sea of exclamation points and ha-has. If you use 3 exclamation points to say thanks, you are performing for the other person's approval. You are using punctuation to manage their emotions. A quiet leader uses punctuation as an anchor. Use periods. They signal finality. They signal that the conversation is over. When someone asks you a question that requires a simple yes, just say yes. Do not add yes sounds great or yes totally. There is a legendary power in the short reply. In the tech world, top CEOs are famous for replying to long, complex proposals with a single word, proceed or no. That single word carries more influence than a 10-page deck. It says, I am the decision maker. I have heard you. This is the path. By stripping away the digital noise, you force the other person to focus entirely on the signal. The ghost strategy. Handling digital conflict. Digital conflict is a trap. When someone sends you an aggressive Slack message or a heated email, your lizard brain wants to fire back. You want to set the record straight. But once you hit send on a defensive reply, you have lost. You have entered their arena of chaos. The most powerful response to a digital attack is no response. Wait. Let the heat of their message sit in the inbox. Often, the person who sent the aggressive message will self-correct if you give them enough silence. They will send a second message saying, sorry, I was just stressed, or ignore that last one, I figured out. By not reacting, you have forced them to deal with their own reflection. You have maintained your dignity while they have lost theirs. If you must respond to a conflict digitally, do it with a pivot to analog. This is too complex for email. Let's talk at 4 p.m. This move immediately re-establishes your authority. You have taken the conflict off their screen and placed it on your schedule. The social media silhouette. In the world of personal branding and social media, the speak less rule translates to strategic mystery. The people with the most influence on social media are not the ones who post their breakfast, their workout, and their every stray thought. Those people are content creators. The quiet leader is a curator. If you post with high density. One profound insight. One high-quality image. One clear statement of value. When you share less of your daily life, the value of what you do share increases. You create a silhouette of yourself, an outline that people can respect but not fully own. Influence is built in the space between what people see and what they imagine. Keep that space guarded. Chapter 9 Summary and Exercise. The digital world is designed to make you loud and always on. To influence this world, you must be quiet and selective. Your phone is a tool for your influence, not a leash for their convenience. Your exercise for today: I want you to perform a digital fast. Turn off all non-human notifications. No news alerts, no likes notifications. The 10-word rule. For the next 24 hours, try to keep every email and text message under 10 words. The 30-minute delay. Do not reply to any non-emergency message for at least 30 minutes. Observe the digital anxiety that arises in you. That anxiety is the sound of your influence growing. You are breaking the habit of reaction and building the habit of command. In our final chapter, Chapter 10, we will look at the art of the legacy. We will bring all 10 chapters together to build a life where your silence is your greatest strength and your few words change the world. Chapter 10, The Legacy of the Quiet Leader. We have traveled through the psychology of silence, the stillness of the body, the precision of the scalpel, and the strategy of the digital void. You have learned to speak less, and in doing so, you have begun to influence more. But as we reach the end of this journey, we must ask, to what end? Influence is not a trophy to be collected. It is a responsibility to be wielded. The quiet leader is not someone who merely wins negotiations or commands boardrooms. The quiet leader is someone who leaves a legacy. A legacy is not built on the noise you made while you were here. It is built on the space you created for others to grow, the clarity you provided when things were chaotic, and the integrity of the few words you chose to leave behind. In this final chapter, we bring all 10 dimensions of silence together. We look at the long game of influence, how to move from a person of power to a person of impact. This is the legacy of a quiet leader. The empty chair authority. The ultimate test of your influence is not what happens when you are in the room. It is what happens when you are not. Most leaders are terrified of being forgotten. They talk constantly, they micromanage, and they insert themselves into every decision because they want to feel essential. But this high-noise leadership creates a fragile system. The moment the leader stops talking, the team stops moving. The quiet leader strives for empty chair authority. By speaking less and teaching others to think through killer questions, you build a culture that mirrors your values even in your absence. When your team faces a crisis and you aren't there, they don't panic. They ask themselves, what would the leader ask us right now? They remember your stillness. They remember your precision. Your influence becomes an invisible hand that guides the organization. True power is not being the loudest voice in the conversation. It is being the internal voice in everyone else's head. The integrity of the final word. In a world of alternative truths and endless spin, the most valuable asset you possess is your unshakable word. Because you have followed the speak less philosophy, you have avoided the liar's trap, the tendency to overpromise or exaggerate just to fill a silence. Every time you spoke in these 10 chapters, you did so with the linguistic scalpel. You only said what was true, and you only promised what you could deliver. Over time, this creates a compound interest of trust. When a talker says, "I'll handle it," people wait for proof. When a quiet leader says, "I'll handle it," the conversation ends. No one asks for a follow-up. No one doubts the outcome. Your legacy is the fact that your yes is a contract and your no is a shield. In the final accounting of a career or a life, people will not remember the clever jokes or the long presentations. They will remember that when things were at their worst, your few words were the only ones they could rely on. The gift of the listening space. As you move through the world with your new skills, you will notice something profound. People are starving to be heard. We live in an attention economy, where everyone is selling and no one is buying. By mastering the strategic listening from Chapter 4 and the trust gap from Chapter 7, you are providing a rare and precious gift. Your legacy is the people you have pulled into their own greatness. By staying silent and asking, "And what else?" you have allowed your partner to find their own strength. You have allowed your child to find their own voice. You have allowed your employees to solve their own problems. You didn't influence them by pushing them. You influenced them by providing the soil in which they could grow. The greatest leaders are not the ones who create the most followers. They are the ones who create the most leaders. And you do that by knowing when to get out of the way. The quiet transition, mentorship and succession. There comes a time when every leader must pass the torch. For the talker, this is an agonizing process. They feel their identity slipping away as they lose their platform. They struggle to let go of the microphone. For the quiet leader, the transition is seamless. Because you have never allowed your ego to be tied to the volume of your voice, you can step back into the silence with grace. Mentorship for the quiet leader is not about giving advice. It is about modeling presence. You show the next generation how to be low reactive. You show them how to conquer the digital noise. You show them that authority is a state of being, not a state of speaking. Your legacy is the lineage of stillness you leave behind, a new generation of leaders who understand that power is a quiet, steady flame, not a loud, flickering fire.